Welcome back. In this series I'm going to show you how to create a stab binding book with a hardcover. Okay, you notice that this has a hinge on it and that this section of the hardcover is kind of a unit, a solid unit, okay, which is a little bit different from the soft cover stab binding since the soft cover can bend wherever, and this is still a solid unit behind the stitching, but you don't have to worry about it because it just automatically works as you open the book. Okay, so this is going to follow many of the same processes as the regular soft cover stab binding. So I suggest that you go ahead and watch that one first, just so that you understand the basics. So what you'll want to do is have two hard covers cut slightly taller. This is like 1/4 of an inch total, a little bit taller than what our book is going to be. Okay, but notice that it's actually the same width. Okay, that is because we can't actually create a hardcover without cutting a piece of this off, okay? And then once we do that, we will hinge it. I think that 1 inch will probably suffice just fine. This takes a lot of pressure to cut like this, this type of cardboard. You can also use a paper cutter. Just be sure that the cardboard doesn't kind of slide and get all crooked as you are cutting. You can also use like a utility knife or whatever. I do suggest that you wear protective gloves. These are some Kevlar gloves. They're actually for gardening. You don't really need it on both hands, but I suggest that you use it on one hand. And you have to use a lot of pressure. Go back and forth like that, okay? So that's one of the covers. Okay, now to cover the covers, I'm going to actually make a hinge separating these slightly so that it will bend. Okay, so to glue this this hinge, I strongly suggest the use of book cloth, which I have another video showing how you can make that. But book cloth is essentially just cloth. Cotton cloth works excellent. Just your plain weave cotton cloth. You can get it in a lot of different patterns and colors, or you can use a plain linen or something like that as well. Because this is going to be moved back and forth like so every time you open the book, cloth will be more durable. Okay, you can also just use paper, but eventually the paper will wear in this crease and your book will fall apart a little bit. I have this small section of book cloth that I've already made earlier and then trimmed it to this size. This size is not ideal because I really want more of an overlap than this tiny little amount on either side. That would barely go over. And you can kind of see on this side it would, I mean, it could work, and maybe I will do that. I could also cut this diagonally, and let's see, and so then the edges would actually overlap quite a bit more. It would be diagonal like this. So that's also an option, and then this part would just kind of be excess and will fold over onto the back. I think that I will go ahead and just cut this 6, so about a little over 3.5 inches. Okay, these don't have to be exact. Then what I want to do is turn this upside down like so. I'm going to use the measurements on the board so I get the two sides lined up the way I want. I'll go about this far. Notice that I'm going to have a space in between this back side and this part of the, I'm going to make this a little bit, I want this back flap to fold under a little bit better. Okay, so then I'm going to trim this and this just a little bit, the corners, to make it a little bit more easy to fold. I'm not going to do that with this side because it's open, so I can just fold it over. Okay. Put some white glue. You can also use your starch or wheat paste. In fact, that is the preferable glue when you are working with fabric, because it keeps it from being shiny. If you get any glue on the other side, I'm going to go ahead and seal the other side of the fabric though, so it'll be shiny anyway, so I'm not too worried about it. And the starch paste does take longer to dry, so line these up. You don't want this to be like that. You want it to be very even. Push down, curl these two edges up. This would be much better if these did overlap farther, but okay, do the same thing on the other one. Make sure that you have pretty close to the same gap here, and that you are overlapping it fairly close to the same amount. Okay, now for the rest of the cover, I am going to line this up on one of the lines, and I can do this after I put the glue on it as well. Then I'm going to cover it with glue. This is a sheet of paper from a tablet, and I really like this texture and this pattern, so I'm keeping it. I could just as easily have trimmed that off. I can also, I'm going to put glue on all these little tabs because I don't want them to get ripped off as the sketchbook is being used. I'm going to spread the glue to the edges, try to make it fairly uniform. Now I'm going to take my cover with the hinge on it. I'm going to flip it over and realign this so that it matches up with that line, and then I'm going to put this lined up with another part of that. Okay. Press down, pull that up nice and tight, and press down. Pull this over nice and tight, press down. And then I could actually have trimmed this end a little bit more, but I'm not going to worry about it. You want to fold it neatly so you don't have a great big blob. Then fold it over and press down. And you can use your thumbnail to kind of smooth it. You can also, if you have a bone folder, you can use that. Okay, so that's one of the covers. Then I do the very same thing to the other one. Okay, because the front of this actually has some glue seeping through because of this texture that I wanted to keep, I'm going to cover the surface with some waxed paper. And this waxed paper can be reused multiple times. It'll help keep those little fragile patterns from sticking to the table or the cutting mat. Okay, now for this type of cover, you really need to finish the inside, okay, before you proceed. Okay, so that is what we're going to do. We're going to take one of these sheets of paper. If the glue is not spread evenly, it can cause like bubbles and wrinkles and all kinds of trouble. Be sure to center it. Okay, then we're going to do the same thing with this one. And you can get as fancy as you like if you want to add another layer of texture or patterned paper to make the interior of the cover more interesting. You can do that as well. Push out all of the air bubbles. You can kind of smooth out the edge. Get a dry piece of waxed paper. Wrap each of your covers. And then press those under some heavy books. Go ahead and pull this up. Allow this tracing paper to dry somewhere safe where it won't get stuck to something, and you can reuse that. So after those are pressed, I will show you the next step. If you use PVA glue, which is what I'm using, this might take like, I don't know, several hours up to a day. If you're using starch or wheat paste that you've made, it'll take a bit longer than that. It kind of depends on the humidity and the temperature, but it will take longer than the PVA.